Hey, Janice.
Hi, Anthony.
Let's talk about how lockdowns are affecting probates. So, today we're going to give you an insider's look into how the lockdowns are making probate even more difficult than usual, because it is kind of a pain even under normal circumstances. And with all these disruptions, it's even worse. Hooray.
Yay.
So, even if the lockdowns are partially or fully lifted by the time this airs, I kind of doubt it. There's probably going to be long, lingering residual effects just because there's kind of a wave or a ripple or a halo effect from all these stoppages. Yeah.
Exactly. So today we're going to discuss how lockdowns are affecting the courts, banks and brokerages, real estate, the IRS, and lastly, creditors.
Cool. Let's start with the courts. So the courts were closed for, I think, almost 2 months. Like literally they weren't taking anything. So that's a problem. Now, at this moment, they are accepting some, well, it depends on the county, but some counties are accepting, I think, mailed uncontested petitions, meaning, just straight,
Right.
spouse or adult child wants letters for their parent. But anything that's contested or complicated or that requires a guardian or a GAL or something like that, I don't think they're accepting them right now.
Nope.
So if you're in one of those non-simple situations, you're kind of stuck. And if you're in, even when it does get unstuck, there's going to be a backlog. I mean,
it's going to be, think about all the people that have sent mail just on a regular day, how much mail they must get.
Right.
Now it's just been sitting, piling up, not their fault, but for 2 months. How big is that pile?
especially given that the event that is causing this pileup has to do with a lot of people dying.
Right. Right. The piles are, I can't imagine what these poor people are stepping into after this. And it's going to take a while to go through those piles.
So they're encouraging, some counties are encouraging you to file by mail, for the circumstances where you're allowed to file. But that's generally not great. And Janice, you can attest to this. When you walk something in and hand it to a clerk and look them in the eye, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of voodoo or like social, psychological pressure for them to actually process your file a little faster. When you mail it, man, sometimes they just disappear.
They just sit because they can. Yeah, you're not standing there going, are you done yet? Are you done?
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, for some reason, filing by mail is not quite a last resort, but it's not your first choice, right?
No, definitely not.
And some counties are accepting in-person appointments to walk in a file, but they're very limited. And, I think you pretty much have to wear like a hazmat suit to get in there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And, also with the courts, we were talking about, filing by mail. Sometimes to call them, to ask them what their new process is or temporary process is, you can't get through to talk to anybody. So there's even more of a backup trying to figure out which process is the best way. I mean, that's just all comes down to this whole lockdown and not as many people are actually there working.
So, yeah, that's how it is now. And I've been telling any new client that we've been getting, and we're getting quite a few because of the situation, it's going to be slow. They're going to be backed up and overwhelmed for a while, I would imagine.
Pack your patience, especially with the courts. That's what I'm telling everybody. Just pack your patience. We're trying with you.
All right, next, let's talk about how banks and brokerages are affected. So many branches are closed, but many are open, at least here in the city. I'd say the biggest problem is that just people are scared to go in and transact, meaning the clients or whatever parties are involved. And I'll give you an example. So we have a case where we're in an adversarial situation where we need the administrator of the estate to go in and figure out a problem with a banking transaction. And once that banking, and it's not, nothing major, you just have to sort it out. That's something that you really can't do by phone. And once that's sorted out, this multi-million-dollar estate will be settled. Well, it'll be resolved. But that administrator hasn't left her apartment in like 2 months and has no intention of going to a bank. So, and she's the one, as we've talked about in the past, when you have an administrator or an executor, that's a non-delegable role. You can't, sign a power of attorney and have somebody else do it for you. You have to personally do it. So if you have an executor or an administrator who's too scared or I guess too vulnerable, I don't know what the word is, to do their job,
you have to wait.
Yeah.
Right. And I know a lot of banks right now, personally, I had to go to the bank and I had to go in a branch and I had to call, which was hard to get through to someone. I had to make an appointment. I had to show up. I was the only one in the bank, but I had to wait outside till someone else was finished. Like it's not easy to just walk into the bank and get something done. It is definitely a process.
Yeah, I've had a couple of banking transactions. It's not too bad here. I mean, there's no line, but I think there is what do you call it? Skeleton staff, and you're not going to get the best
definitely.
necessarily the most savvy banker who knows. Oh yeah, that's how an estate works. You might get somebody who's more green behind the ear, or was it green behind? No, wet behind the ears.
Right. Yeah.
And doesn't know what letters testamentary are, which is just going to make things a headache for you.
Right. And since there aren't a lot of people working, they don't have anyone to call to ask. So it's definitely slowing things down.
I would guess that situation the banking staffing will resolve itself sooner than the court stuff. But the issue of people and counterparties being too scared to go to the bank, that might take a while to undo.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Next, real estate. This is a problem.
Fun.
So we have a couple of states where we're trying to sell or liquidate real estate. And until recently, okay, so here's how it works in New York. We have townhouses that we're trying to sell, meaning it's like a house. As of yesterday, I believe, or as of very recently, because I don't know when this is going to air, we just started being allowed to show, show for open houses or
okay,
right. However, for co-ops or condos, which have associations or boards, you have to wait for the board to pass a resolution to allow showings. And I don't know of a building yet that's allowed that. It's going to take a while. So you have that kind of dichotomy where I guess they'd be considered single family homes where you don't have a board to report to. You can do what you need to do. But condos and co-ops is going to be a little bit slower. That's just showings. We don't know what the market looks like.
That's just a look at the house. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know what sort of demand there is. I mean, we have estates where we had, we had what we thought was the value of the property as of whatever January, February.
Yeah.
And we're gonna find out how much things have fallen.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that there could be like a reverse effect where maybe once this all is lifted, that everyone's like, okay, now we're ready to move? Maybe it could increase. I'm not.
I'm. This is not an episode where we're going to opine on the real estate market per se, but I can't imagine there being a strong demand to buy in Manhattan right now.
Okay, well, Manhattan's a little bit different. Yes, that's true. But so it's definitely hard when you're trying to sell real estate. Yeah, and in probate.
Yeah, in fact, from what we're seeing, there's a lot of demand to buy in the suburbs.
Yeah,
to get out of the city, but for folks who probably still work around here. If anything, you might see a lack of listings because I think a lot of people realize this, and if they were thinking of selling, maybe they'll wait a year or two.
They're holding off. Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. All right, next, the IRS. Our friends at the IRS.
Oh, this one's my favorite.
So for anyone who doesn't know, to close an estate, you must get IRS clearance, or not necessarily. Almost every estate has some tax issues. And the executor must get IRS clearance. This is like a no audit letter, meaning the IRS has thoroughly reviewed probably the last 3 tax returns for the decedent and has no problems and is letting you go, right? Before the lockdowns, this took a long time. This took months. Sometimes we had some cases where the IRS just straight up said to us, we'll get back to you in a year.
Yep. Actually, a couple of cases.
Yeah. And then they would extend after that. So more than a year for the IRS to give us a clearance. I can only imagine it's going to be slower now, which is just brutal.
I can't imagine. Yes.
So, I mean, there's ways around that. If the heirs are willing to escrow some of the money or do something like that, you can do that. Or if you have an executor who is willing to bear the risk and say, oh, if I pay out the estate to the heirs, but it later turns out that we owe the IRS money and I can't get the money back from the heirs, which you never do, then I'll pay out of pocket. I don't think anyone wants to sign up for that, but there might be somebody who does. Yeah.
Maybe. But I think just like what I was saying earlier with the courts, when they fully open up and they're completely operational, the piles that they have to sort through are going to take months and months and months to go through.
So the IRS has been getting steadily slower in the past 5 to 10 years. So I don't know if there's going to be an inflection point where they just change their process and approve our closing letters faster, like they just stop checking it as thoroughly, or if it's just going to keep piling on and getting ridiculous. I don't know what's going to happen, but I haven't seen any. It's not an up and down roller coaster. It just keeps getting longer.
It does, and it started. It was last year, right? They closed in the beginning of the year. They were on the furlough for a few months.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
So we noticed that. Well, of course, everything was sitting there and waiting to be processed. So it took months to process things that were sent in January. So they're finally maybe catching up. And then we have a lockdown pandemic. So
that was the government shutdown, correct?
Yes, that's right. That's right. So they were just coming out of that. I don't know what their workload was like, but I can imagine they were just starting to probably see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then, oh, guess what?
Yeah, and between, delayed tax deadlines, and I don't know if the IRS is running PPP or any of those other programs, but I'm pretty sure estate closing letters is really low on their priority.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many other pressing issues. I think that's pretty low on their totem pole.
All right, but we've talked about this in other episodes, but just the heads up here is that it is probably going to add to the delays.
Yes.
All right, so lastly, creditors, and this is the hilarious part. Creditors seem largely unaffected by the lockdowns.
Right.
Just as aggressively as usual. They want their money, probably even more now. So this is the most annoying. So in general, Janice, like with the that Toyota situation we had.
Oh yeah.
Some of those other ones. If not for the fact that you were stuck at home, would you have, based on Toyota's calling volume, would you have guessed that there was any change or anything?
None.
Yeah.
None at all. None at all. That's with letters and calls, and they have not. Their momentum is as strong as it was before all this.
So here's one of the more annoying examples of that. In one of our estates, we have a co-op that we can't sell, and the co-op board has not authorized us to show the apartment. Right. So we can't even show it.
Right.
How are we going to sell it if we can't show it? But
right.
The lady who passed, was a little bit behind on her maintenance before she passed, and it's now going into arrears because there's no money in the estate to pay the maintenance until we sell it, which they won't let us do. I'm going to keep repeating that. Yeah, but they have been very aggressive and threatening litigation for us to pay for the estate to pay the maintenance that's in arrears, and we keep saying we would love to pay it if we can sell it. Right. Well, you can't sell it, but we need you to pay it. And it's just rounding around.
It's a circle. Right. Don't you feel like you're in a circle, right? Yeah, like a merry-go-round that you can't get off of.
So that's just, again, an example of how creditor and that's a funny example because the co-op is on both sides of the story there, right?
Right.
So they're an aggressive creditor, but they're actually, kind of stonewalling us on being able to sell it. So
right. Right.
I love co-ops.
But I found this with all of the creditors. I mean, we are still getting the mail notifications as if nothing has happened in the world.
Yeah. So, that's it. That's the last one. How creditors, and generally, I think the takeaway here is that there have been some pretty significant effects to the probate process, and just count on it being a lot longer than you thought it would be.
Yeah, but the reality is a lot longer.
Yeah.
You know what? I tell people, just pack your patience. We're all in this together, and when we're sitting and waiting on like the RRS and stuff, we're waiting with you.
Yeah.
There's really nothing. You're just waiting.
Yeah.
If you want to learn how all this works in general, check out Anthony's book, How Probate Works, available on Amazon. And that'll give you a little bit of it dives into some of this a little bit more, but go ahead and add on a few months to each of the timelines that you'll read.
Yeah, and we get to bear the brunt of that because clients, they don't call the IRS, they call us, and that's fair. That's our job. But I'm telling you, this is what we're dealing with.
You, right? Just that's what I feel like I say. It says we are waiting and we feel your pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's all we have for today. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Janice, and we'll talk again soon.
Talk soon.
Bye now.